So the main deal is getting this thing watertight before I really fix up the inside, because if this thing's leaking like a sieve, that's issues. Alright guys, so here's the update on the boat. Basically on the back, or the stern on the deck, and it's a good sized deck out here. It's a bit of a mess right now. I've been working, but it's about 13 feet wide by roughly 13 feet long, so it's a good size. I mean, you stick a barbecue out here and a few deck chairs and you're cooking. So that's the size. Basically what's happening is below here is the bedroom or the cabin, and I've got some leaks coming in, so I wanted to get this thing dry. The teak on this boat, again, it's 1956, there's no rot. There's absolutely no rot in any of the teak decking, which is bizarre. So that is a bonus. But what happens is, obviously, if the caulking is gone in places, or a lot of it is, it'll just leak through and end up on the plywood. It'll run out into the bedroom or wherever. So I want to start getting this caulking done. And that process is a bit of a pain and it's time consuming. But what basically I'm doing is I'm scrubbing the deck. It hasn't been cleaned in a long time. And it's coming up really nice. I've still got a lot of work to do. And then what you do is you scrape the caulking out of these. You see these lines here? That's where the old caulk was. And then you scrape it out, clean it out, vacuum it out. And then after that, there's a couple ways of doing it. Some guys just will caulk that seam with a caulking gun and then kind of, flatten it out. And it makes a bit of a mess, but then you just sand it off. I talked to a few old guys that know what they're doing, and they said you don't want to sand the deck. You don't want it smooth and shiny and slippery. And I'm not really into that look. I want this to be utility. I want it to be easy to maintain. So instead of sanding it, all the caulk off after you've made this mess, I'm going to clean out the caulk. I'm going to tape either side of the caulking lines, and then I'm going to fill it. I'll spread the caulking out, let it sit for an hour or so, and then peel the tape up. It'll leave me a nice seam on the line, and I don't have to sand. I don't want to sand this thing. And again, you don't want to sand allegedly, because you're taking away teak. So if this had been sanded 20 times, there might not be any teak left. And again, you don't want it smooth. So that's how I'm going to roll with this thing. And where it's located right now, it's going to be a pain if I did want to sand it, because I'd have to tarp everything up. They don't want it, your crap in the ocean. So that's kind of the plan, and I'm going to show you what I've run into and how I'm rocking this thing. Trash this bucket. It's toast. Faulty. So I got some kitchen supplies out. Thinking I need a serrated blade. You're supposed to go across the grain, but I haven't been always. But check it out. Check the, see that gray coming out of it? Beauty. I think if it was fresh caulking, you wouldn't want to go with the grain, because you'd be just digging out your caulking. So that's probably one of the reasons. And the other reason is you don't want to dig out the grain, the softer parts of the grain. So that's why you're supposed to go across. So this is dry now, obviously, and you can see where I've scrubbed right here. I scrubbed this as well, but this I kind of really went over, and you can see the difference. So I'm going to hit this whole half all through here. I'm going to hit it again and see how it goes. This here is my internet. So here's a portion I did just with the brush, and there's what it used to look like. Pretty cool. So I'm swabbing the deck here, and look at my buddy. Hey, buddy. This is the section I just did, and of course I had to clean this first, the deck, and then I had to carve out all this caulking, and then after that I had to, you know, clean it out, clean the caulking out, vacuum it up, get it ready to go. Then I had to tape it, which took some time, and you can see how wide it is. It goes to about there. I screwed up a couple spots, but I'll fix it, no big deal, it's not the end of the world. And then I had to fill it with caulking. So this run, it's about this long here, took about, I don't know, 3/4 of a tube of caulking, and it took me probably from the very beginning, you know, from the scrubbing to the final deal, it took probably about 3 hours. And you can see how small that section is to the rest of the deck, just in the back here. Plus I've got to go up the sides and I've got to do the bow. So I'm looking at this going, okay, I did the calcs, and it's going to take 3 to 5 years to do. Actually, no, it's not going to take that long, but it's going to take some time. So the plan is this: I'm going to do something else. So on the community tab, hope you can hear me, it's a bit of a zoo down here today. I showed some of this wood and how the grain matches, and I was kind of blown away. How the heck did they do that? Well, I know how they did it now. So basically what's happening is these aren't individual pieces of wood. The plank is 3 of those wide. So this is one plank here, and what they've done is this is butted up to the next plank, which is 3 wide. So this seal here, and you can see it, and it's easy to find too, especially when it's wet, you can see it. These guys here, these 2 middle ones, are just cut out. They're just routed out or cut out on a table saw to look like the rest of it, of course, but this is one plank. So here you can see what I'm talking about with the decking. You can see the boards, and you can see where it goes all the way through, and you can see where it's just cut to make it look like it's gone through, which is right there. So that's just it's in whatever that is, not even 1/4 of an inch, but it gives that look. And then that one's the same, and that one there goes right through, and then there's another plank, and so on. So what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to go through all these guys. These guys aren't making my boat leak. It's these guys. If this crack is big enough, obviously it goes right through into the plywood below and comes out somewhere into the boat. So what I'm going to do is, for now, I'm just going to do these seams. These are the seams I want to get, because this will make the boat watertight. And then I'll come back at a later date and get these guys, these 2. So that's what I'm going to do. And on these seams, you can see the original caulking is here. And here's a piece here. And this one's coming out really easy, and that's not normal. I've been struggling to get some of this stuff out. The caulking, just get the caulking out. So this one has the original cotton. It's almost like string, I guess. You can see me popping it up. So they would pack that in there, in between these boards, and then caulk over it. So this one's coming up pretty easy. So I got kind of lucky there. There's the caulking. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this seam, and then this seam, and that's a board, and that will take care of my any water penetrating into the boat. So that's what I'm going to do now, and that'll probably save me a ton of caulking and a ton of time, and I'll be able to get this thing done a lot quicker. Not 100% done, but watertight. So this is what I'm using as far as the caulking. This stuff is highly recommended. This is what this is for. Sikaflex 291, that's what this stuff is designed for. So that's good. I've got some masking tape. To tape off these seams, on either side of them, so then I can run my gun across here, my caulking gun. And then I can push it in, make sure I've got a good, it's jammed in there with this guy, and it's only spreading on the tape. Again, other people do this, and I'm not saying it's bad or right or wrong, without tape, and then you get this, the deck is basically all black caulking, and then you got to let it dry and sand the deck down. So anyway, there's that. I used a hook knife from Home Depot. It was about 10 bucks. You can buy a special tool to pull this caulking out, but I think it's about 60 bucks. The only thing I can say about using this, it's working well, but this is sharp. So basically what you got to be careful of, when you're running this knife on a seam here and you're pulling it through, if you kind of wave off, you know, in either direction, you're going to start slicing into the wood. So what I think I would do, and I might do, is just file this down. You know, or slap it with a hammer and just get rid of that edge. So it's squared off and it'll just rip stuff up. So this is good and it works great. And some of the caulking, instead of me pulling out the caulking, what I mean by that caulking is the cotton that I'm finding in between the boards, not between each seam. I'll just push it back in. And what else do I got? I got a screwdriver just to finish the clean out, and that's it. And I got a couple of these things rolling around, and that's what I'm using. So here's a seam I just did, and there's the one board, and there's another board, and there's the seam, so there's a gap there. So I just cleaned that out and caulked it, and it's looking good. So that is not going to give me a headache with water. On this side of the boat, it's been sanded quite a bit, and you can see it here. See that? It's really low here. It kind of ramps up to where this lid was on. And you can also see these plugs are starting to come up because they're pretty shallow now. They're pretty thin, right? So yeah, this one's been sanded, and that's what happens if you know, grind the wood down for years, possibly. See how shallow that is?